Welcome to your Virgo horoscopes for the week of the 5th to the 11th of May. And yes, you're going to notice that there was no horoscopes next week, or last week, I should say. Last week was recovery from the storm week. And as much as I did have a plan of getting those horoscopes together, even if they were a little bit late, there was just no time. And when there was time, there was literally, I had nothing left for it. And I do apologize for that. Things have calmed down a little bit though since then. Last week, we finished the shadow period of that pesky Mercury retrograde. It's no longer plaguing us anymore. We won't have to deal with that until summertime, late summertime, where the next Mercury retrograde is a little bit in Virgo, but mainly in Leo. I think we're going to have at least a few days in Virgo, but the bulk of it really is going to be in Leo. There's no planets to speak about in Virgo this week. Of course, we still have Juno influencing things, and the dark moon, she's a coming back this week as well, because she just goes retrograde back and forth and back and forth and back and forth the whole time. So by the end of the week, she is definitely back in Virgo full time as of right now until she turns around and leaves again in retrograde, which the dark moon's all about making changes. So when the dark moon is retrograde, tends to feel like it's impossible to make changes, if that makes sense. And we have Juno. Juno is sitting right on the cusp of who you are as a person and how that's influenced by the past. But Juno is all about our relationships. So what's interesting actually about Juno's placement this week really has a lot to do with how much the relationship with the person that you are interacting with has to do with who you are as a person around or towards them. And it's really actually interesting to sit down and kind of take a look at this, because a lot of times our language, our body language, our thoughts, the way we do things are very much taken from the people around us, which is fine unless we're picking up bad habits from other people. Now, this doesn't mean that we should be blaming them for giving us the bad habit. Oh no, it is our choice to pick it up. So we cannot pass blame. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. We cannot place blame here. But it is a good idea to check in and be aware of that. You could also have a completely different personality most of the time, but when you interact with one person in particular, your personality shifts. And it's a good idea to kind of take a look at the progression of that relationship to understand where that shift came from. I think bottom line here is that when we're talking about relationships with people we've had relationships with for a really long time, we get set in our ways in terms of how we interact with those people. And if we've had a lot of challenges in that relationship specifically, we start to have we start to interact with them in not necessarily a positive way. We get stuck in certain communication patterns. This is how couples that have been together for a long time get stuck in these argumentative patterns constantly, because there's all these triggers that have been laid down before you got to this point right here. So Juno's really trying to show you where you may be getting stuck in some of these interactive patterns within those relationships. The dark moon, on the other hand, is all about the mind and how the mind works, and being retrograde really makes it almost impossible, but not, I mean, nothing is impossible. You have to work a little bit harder, basically, in terms of changing their thought processes around certain people. So, for example, we're going back to that long-term relationship here. We automatically go to this is what's going to happen because this is what always happens. And that's true. And every single time we do that, we chisel what little bit of hope we had of things changing out of it. And it becomes to a point where you're always defensive with this person. You feel like you have to overprotect yourself with this person. That kind of puts you in a situation to where you kind of make mistakes interacting with the person. The person feels like they can feel that disconnection. So, of course, they react to it. It's just a mess. When you're talking about relationships, everybody always says if they would just do this or change everything that they're doing or whatever, then it would work for me. But nobody is saying, okay, what am I doing that could be causing a problem in this relationship? The minute you do that, you actually have some control over changing the progression of the relationship and how you interact with each other. And it's really hard to stop interacting in the same way over certain situations within a relationship. Trust me on this. I have some experience in that, being married for almost 30 years and going through some pretty difficult situations lately, I just have to say also. It's hard for me to not react in the same way every single time, but it's not fixing the problem. So that's where I have to turn it back on me and decide how much of this is my issue that I need to work through and has nothing to do with him. How much of this is his issue that he needs to take care of and it's really none of my business. How much of this is ruling how I'm reacting to him every time I talk to him. Understanding these things gives you a bit of a leg up in the relationship, and it helps you to change the communication patterns, which is what that Mercury retrograde was all about anyways, right? Changing the way we communicate with others so that we're not stuck in negative communication patterns. So that's what I have for you guys this week. I'm Melissa Bruce, Heavy Metal Psychic. I will see you next week. You guys, as usual, make it a great week. I know you always do. And even if it's not a great week, you can still salvage it and make it a great week as much as possible. I'll see you guys next week. I look forward to it, and make it a great one, you guys.